abajo se defiende a todo mundo. Radio Jornalera, donde tu voz encuentra un eco amplificado, donde tus derechos salen a la luz y disipan el miedo, donde tus aportes a la sociedad se evidencian, donde se reconoce que tus luchas reivindican derechos para todas y todos. Radio Jornalera destaca a la gente humilde que pelea por sus derechos a pesar de sus circunstancias de despojo y marginación. Eleva a los individuos y sus luchas y muestra cómo la clase trabajadora y humilde puede ser agente de cambio cuando se organiza, cuando se defiende y cuando tiene una lectura correcta de su propia realidad. Radio Jornalera provee el espacio para aprender de los invitados e invitadas sobre sus vidas, lo que les motiva a seguir adelante, sus virtudes y desafíos y hasta su música y poesía favorita. Radio Jornalera recalca el trabajo de activistas, organizadores, educadores y algunas celebridades, sus causas, sus campañas, sus estrategias, sus tácticas y los reveses más duros en el perenne quehacer de formar líderes para hacer el mundo más justo, más humano, más inclusivo. Para cambiar el mundo, primero hay que conocer a las personas que sobreviven las injusticias y políticas públicas groseras. Hay que apoyar y solidarizarse con sus luchas, porque desde abajo se defiende a todo mundo. Radio Jornalera, donde los anhelos y el sentir del pueblo trabajador cobran vida.
Everyone, welcome back to New Brunswick Speaks. I'm Jamie Gomez, and I'm here with
Victoria Masteller.
And today we are so lucky and honored to be interviewing Manuel Castañeda. He is the New Brunswick City Council President and the Vice President of Operations of New Brunswick Tomorrow.
And we're really excited to talk to John because John Keller, the Director of Education of Collab Arts, has been a longtime resident, and so has Manny. So we would love to know from your perspective, and also working with New Brunswick Tomorrow for a very long time in different projects and different aspects, some of your thoughts, some of the things that we should ask Manny.
Hi. Great. Yeah. It was funny when I was thinking about today's guest, I was actually thinking about also the beginnings of Collab Arts because Man and I actually participated in a leadership fellowship program together that New Brunswick Tomorrow used to run. And our final project was together. We were in a group together in which we talked about community storytelling as part of our final storytelling project. And that was actually making me think too, like Collab Arts has changed so much over that time, but so has New Brunswick Tomorrow. So I think it would be kind of interesting to know from him, what was the New Brunswick Tomorrow that he stepped into, and what is that organization today? Like, what has been that change over time, and what kinds of either new programs or initiatives, or how has the organization evolved? Because I also imagine that story is a story of how New Brunswick has evolved over that period of time. And then I was also thinking, so it's funny whenever I see Manny, the two of us always, the first conversation we have with each other is as artists. So he's always asking me what new projects I'm working on, and he's a musician and he has an amazing band. So I feel like you need to ask him about.
Ooh, what's his band name?
Tempo Alegre.
Oh.
I think I've said that correctly.
Yeah, you got it.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
And I would also say, as someone, so he's also sits on city council, right? So he's thinking about kind of like, what is the connection between nonprofit social services on the ground in New Brunswick? And then what is also the connection between city government and city services? So I think he also sits in kind of a unique place to comment on like, where does New Brunswick need to be going, right? Like, what's the future planning side of it? Because in a lot of ways, he sits in a space where he has to be thinking about that. Like, what do we need to prepare for right now in New Brunswick for the future? How's that?
Those are great.
Yeah, I think you gave us a lot of good material.
Great.
I need to get into it.
So get at it.
And so now we are back with Manuel, or who we like to call with endearment, Manny. Thank you so much for being here, Manny.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
We have a really wonderful intern, Emily, who we are like holding on to for dear life.
Yes.
She's just
It's important to hold on to good interns.
Yeah.
She's amazing. And she did us the honor of doing a bunch of research on your history, of your work, of all that you've been involved in. And what we noticed is that at the core of it, you have a really deep care for community, for health, for even legal advocacy. And so we were really curious and wanted to hear a little bit about growing up. What motivated you to begin that journey in health and legal advocacy?
So it starts with my mother. My mother was a teacher at New Brunswick for over 30 years, bilingual ed teacher. And so one of the things that her and my father really instilled in us was the importance of giving back to the community. And so I think it really stuck with both myself and my sister, who's a social worker as a profession. And for me, it was, I growing up in New Brunswick, really understanding, that the diversity that we had, and understanding coming from a marginalized community, a first generation marginalized community, understanding the needs of especially those who aren't generally seen. I think when I got into college, that even was something that was awoken even more in me. So when I graduated college, I knew that I wanted to give back. I knew that I wanted to find something that I can do that would really be of benefit to the Latino community. A good amount of my friends and colleagues ended up going into education or law enforcement. But because a lot of them went that way, I felt, okay, that's an area that's already kind of seeing a good flow of Latinos and African Americans going into that area. And so where is an area that I can go into that doesn't have that? At the time, and here I am dating myself, at the time is when the HIV/AIDS epidemic was really at its height. In minority communities, it was still very taboo to talk about. And that's kind of where I ended up going, working in the HIV/AIDS area, because I felt that I could make a difference in an area that really needed a lot of assistance, understanding, especially for communities that just didn't really understand or didn't want to deal with it. And people were dying, and so that sort of kind of led me to going into the HIV/AIDS world, and ended up staying there for over close to 20 years doing that type of work.
What kind of work were you doing within it? Were you doing advocacy and outreach, or can you tell us more?
So I started off as an outreach worker.
Okay.
And I would literally be doing education, but as well as also going out into the community and neighborhood canvassing, and just talking to people, and really talking to them, making sure they understood what the disease was and the issues around them, how to prevent it, things that they should consider. Really trying to talk to our youth, but then also looking for ways, my boss at the time at so I was working at the Hyacinth Foundation at this point, doing that type of work. And Axel Torres Morero and myself, we understood, who was also Latino Puerto Rican descent, understood that we needed to create messaging around the disease, if you will, in a way that would relate to the Latino community. And what are the barriers culturally that kind of lead to this, and how do we kind of deal with that, right? And one of the areas that we ended up developing a training on was really diving into the notions of machismo and marianismo in the Latino community. And so for those that don't necessarily know what that means, machismo, which is I think is the probably more popular term, that people, that men are men, and that, that they are the ones that kind of set the rules and above everything. And so understanding that is important, right? On the opposite side, Marianismo is kind of taking on the notion that women should take the personification of the Virgin Mary. And while they're unmarried, there shouldn't be no talk of sex because they shouldn't be having sex. And therefore what we were seeing, and there's a lot of religious connotations here, right? And so when you talk about it in a public health perspective, the issue is not to attack and try to destroy, try to go against those cultural norms. And we can argue whether, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that, but if your goal is public health, then how do you take those norms and create messagings understanding those norms, right? To get to the means. And so, for example, with machismo, with the notions of machismo, what we decided to start to talk to men was, here you are, you're supposed to be the provider and the protector of your family. We have a disease that you need to protect them from. And so, although I understand that as a man, you don't need to use protection, if you really care about your family and you really take your role seriously, you will as that provider and protector, right? So using the notion, right? And then with Latina women and Marianismo, really trying to help them engage in conversations that they feel comfortable, addressing, let's say, and using protection without the notion of them appearing to be, promiscuous, right? And so we developed these type of talks to the point that we were actually invited and did a lot of these talks in churches. Okay. And so we got some priests to agree. Obviously there were barriers and limitations as to what we could talk about, but it got to the point that we were able to have those conversations in churches, and really. What the main thing that I learned through all that experience is that you really need to meet people where they're at, right? That you need to put aside your own notions of justice or morality or ethics to a certain extent. If your goal is public health, then stick to that. And if the goal, and again, that's not to say that, we're not going to address social justice or we're not going to, but if this is the goal and this is a means to get there, then let's do that first.
Yeah. Sounds like you're saying also that that in that work, you're again, meeting them where they're at without trying to shame them or change their perspective. In that moment, it's more like you're saying about guiding them to the resources and putting the focus on them being able to actually access it and get there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You need to get anything that you do in community, you need community buy-in.
Right.
And so if you're already like this, you're not going to be effective.
Right.
And so you have to find a middle ground. You have to find lines of communication where you're at least talking to each other and hearing each other, looking for that standard, that universal language between the two, so that in that understanding, you can then affect change.
Absolutely. And that to me sounds like that, you started in outreach and that those conversations in the churches led you to this outreach work, but even that perspective of meeting them where they're at, right? And really not clashing with them is getting into the public service of it all. And so we wanted to hear too a little bit about from your work with health advocacy and legal advocacy as well. How did that shift from then meeting into like New Brunswick Tomorrow and the work that they do, and how did you meet them there? How did that lead there?
Yeah, wow, you're talking about a big time jump. So at Hyacinth, I moved from outreach to actually being a legal advocate. And so there was a legal services department at Hyacinth that addressed the legal issues of people who were HIV positive, living with AIDS, which was unique because the disease itself caused some changes in policy. So for example, at the time, when we talk about immigration, HIV was a grounds for exclusion into this country. So if you were HIV positive, that was, the way the law was written, you weren't allowed in the country.
Yeah.
And so that's just one of those nuances that the disease kind of was, it affected the way laws were and ordinances were created. And so it necessitated or it created a need to create a legal department that would address those intricacies, if you will. Yeah. And so that's where I came in. First starting as an advocate, really just providing legal education and advocacy. Couldn't provide representation because I was not an attorney, but we did the most that we could. The great thing, though, is that in administrative law hearings, you don't have to be an attorney in order to represent, or at least the majority of them. So, for example, we did a lot of disability claims, so Social Security disability, SSI, trying to get people who at least to get disability subsidies, right? And so we were able to go into the court and represent, it being that it's an administrative court, and represent people. As someone who was at the time an aspiring, potential lawyer, it was great because I was getting hands-on experience as to what it was. What I learned that I don't think my colleagues that went directly into law school learned is that justice, unfortunately, isn't necessarily blind as much as we would like it to be. There are everybody comes in, and we're all human, right? So we all come in with going back to our own morals, our own ethics, principles, ways of thinking. And so as a psychology major from Rutgers, you always think, well, you're ever going to use what you actually went to school for. I learned real quick that you also have to take into account the individual you're advocating in front of. What are their what are their positions on certain things? So I'll give you an example. Let's say I knew I was going to be in front of Judge X, and I knew Judge X was very big on medications. So I would prepare my argument understanding that I needed to really address the medication issue, right? But it also goes with creating an atmosphere that the reality is, if people are happy or content, they're more inclined to go with the flow of things, as opposed to if they're already coming in a bad, in much like everybody, right? If you're in a bad mood, you're going to be less giving in a sense, right? And so what I learned was try to create that atmosphere. And so I knew a judge that was a big Yankees fan, and so I would always ask for a pre-trial meeting, in order to just kind of get dialogue going. And I know he was a Yankees fan, so I would have him start talking about Yankees, whether it be good or bad, but get him going. And then so we got in there was already a dialogue, a good dialogue. And so I'm not saying that this was a way to you were going to get the decision your way, but I learned that the psychology of things also plays into things.
It's amazing what you're saying throughout all of this is literally exactly that, meeting people where they're at, whether or not it's a judge or a person on the street that you're trying to say like, hey, you should really know about this issue. That if you don't have some sort of basis to talk on, then how are you going to really connect and really hear each other out?
Right.
So given all this work and going more in the legal sense, does this bring you to New Brunswick Tomorrow, or is there?
It brings me to Central Jersey Legal Services, where I served as a paralegal, and continue to represent people in Social Security disability claims. I did unemployment, I did welfare. So really helping people that were, that kind of needed that assistance, and representing them, making sure that their story was told in a way that it would make sense, whether they really needed that type of assistance or not, and so learned a lot there. Also was able to do some immigration work there. So immigration for me was a big thing. And so I at Hyacinth actually created, the immigration advocacy work that we were doing, and kind of followed that through at Legal Services by continuing that work in terms of whatever we could do with respects to helping people adjust status as much as possible.
And then you mentioned like possibly being an aspiring lawyer. At that point, are you trying to figure out if you're going to go back for law school, or are you like dabbling of like which path to go? So
it's been a long time since those days. But I'd lie to you if I'd say that it doesn't. Every now and then I don't get the inkling to go back. I think my wife would probably divorce me at this point if I were to go back, just because of the amount of time and the stress of going back to school. And doing it with 2 kids, right? So I'm gonna I'm gonna look in the camera and say, so I ended up getting my 2 masters after I was married and had kids. Can you do it? Yes. Do you want to do it that way? No. It takes a lot. It takes a lot out of you. One of the things that I like to talk to, so I will mentor students, middle school students, high school students, even people in college. And the first thing that I tell them is, whatever your plan is, don't take too long of a wait. And the thing that unfortunately happens is that once you join the real world, if you will, and you start working, minutes turn into years turn into decades. And when I finally looked up, it was 20 years and I hadn't gotten my master's, something that I had said, oh, I'm only going to take 2-3 years off and then go back.
Yeah.
And so here I am one day waking up with a wife and a newborn saying, I need to get my master's. And so got my first master's in healthcare management, because at that time, being that I worked so much in HIV/AIDS, health and law, and trying to find that intermix or that place in between the two is really what excited me and kind of what I wanted to pursue. And so got there. And then after 2 years and getting that master's, I looked at my wife. I'm like, well, it's your turn. Are you ready? She's like, I'm not ready yet. I'm like, well, then I'm going for round 2.
Yeah.
Second baby.
Yeah.
So working full time,
Yeah.
2 kids,
Wow.
two babies at home,
Yeah.
wife's off working full time. And so went and got my master's in health law.
Yeah.
So this was my way of, I'm going to law school, yes, but I'm not going to law school, or at least getting a law degree. I got my master's in jurisprudence.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the story of where I ended up, at least there. My thought was actually to get into healthcare compliance, because I found that very interesting. But like everything, I always make a joke, especially about New Brunswick, where I say, I'm going to date myself again, but there's a part in The Godfather movie where the main character, Michael Corleone, played by Al Pacino, says, every time I try to get out, they keep pulling me back in.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about New Brunswick,
Yeah.
in a loving way, and I think that's how I feel about the law, in a sense where it keeps and so now we're talking about another 5, 6, 7 years down the line, and I still have that desire every now and then to go to school. Do I have it in me? I don't know. But we'll see.
So a mentor of mine, they talked about when you leave college, your undergrad, and then you wait to go for your master's, that you should wait until you understand the questions of what you don't understand. Meaning like, okay, I've worked enough, I've gone, and now I have enough questions that I need answered that I can't do on the ground. So you did all of this on the ground work, all of this different types of like legal work. So what questions did you have that you had to go answer at school that you couldn't answer by continuing to pursue these different avenues that you were already in?
Quite frankly,
I
needed school to legitimize my professionalism.
Okay.
Right? I think that I learned a lot, but the reality is we're still in a world where titles matter.
Of course.
If you want to do stuff. And so I ended up getting those titles to really just legitimize what I had learned, in my experience at the different places that I worked in, and what I wanted to do. That's not to say that you don't learn things. Yeah, obviously you do learn things, and you learn, and so you then mix the two. I think the advantage to going to school after you have some experience is that you're able to kind of really take what you learn and apply it through the experience that you have, as opposed to kind of idealistically coming into a situation and then kind of getting hit by a brick wall that the way I learned this isn't necessarily the way that this is playing out. And so I think that you're afforded that opportunity, but at the same time you don't want to wait too long to get to where you need to go.
So you have these 2 masters, which I dream of, and then you have 2 kids and a wife. Is this how we now get to New Brunswick Tomorrow?
We now get to New Brunswick Tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay.
So I ended up I ended up working for Rutgers Medical School, and continued to work as a case manager. What I loved about that job, and I think it also really kind of set in pace what I wanted to envision as an ideal for people, is I worked in a medical home. And what a medical home means is that you have a team of people working for you. You have doctors, you have nurses, you have social workers, you have psychiatrists, psychologists, all working for that individual. So it's literally comprehensive medical care, which I think really should be given to everybody, because it really helps treat the whole person. I'm happy to hear that, and see that medical education has moved beyond just treating the symptom to treating the person. And that's what I was able to experience in that job. was, having this team, getting all these multidisciplinary experts and to come in and say, okay, we have person A that needs A, B, and C. What's your perspective? What's your perspective? My job at this job was really to give a reality check to the nurses and the doctors. So for example, we would have individuals, and we dealt mainly with pediatric cases. And so when the children weren't showing up for appointments, sometimes the first inclination was, well, let's call DIFUS because this is, they're not taking care of their child. And I'm like, before we do that, let's understand why they didn't come here. Do we understand that this individual is undocumented and can't take time off of work? Because if they take time off of work, there is no work. And if we look at the basic needs of making sure that there's a roof over their head, that there's food on the table, yes, health is important, but it's not going to supersede shelter and food, right? And so part of my job was to really provide that realistic expectation so that we were all working together, right? And so it's great to have people come in not only from different disciplines, but providing different ways of thinking, because it allows you to really see the person in different ways in order to really get to a point where you're effectively providing care. So that led me to New Brunswick Tomorrow. I'm older than I look, unfortunately, but
you look great.
Yeah.
So then where do you start with New Brunswick Tomorrow, and then where are you now with New Brunswick Tomorrow? So what's the scene when you're walking in?
So New Brunswick Tomorrow, when I'm walking in, so I took the job as Director of Community Health, which was great because, here we are in a position where, number one, I can give back to not only the place that I live in, but the place that I grew up in. I made a decision with my wife to say that we were going to stay here and we were going to create roots here. And so all in on New Brunswick, And so for me, if you're going to make that type of decision, you really give yourself completely. I believe, I'm a firm believer that community is effective when all community steps up. So I don't agree that you should look at government to be the savior of everything. I don't agree that, everybody and every organization in town needs to do their part in order to really uplift the organization. That's one thing that I really see in New Brunswick that we have, can it get better? Sure. You can always push for better. But I think it's important to recognize that in New Brunswick, there are organizations, faith-based organizations, community-based organizations, government entities, even private sector. When we talk about Johnson & Johnson and Rutgers, that do come together on particular issues. For someone, my job was really, and when I came into New Brunswick Tomorrow, one of our major functions is to serve as a convener of all these stakeholders and to bring them together to address the needs of the community. At that time, it was focused on the health needs of the community, and so the work was there to, we had a network, and we still have a network called Healthier New Brunswick, where we get together, different organizations and the government to really identify what those issues are and see what we can affect. How can we create initiatives around those issues in order to meet the needs of the community? A lot of the work that we do also is integrating the community. So doing a lot of community engagement so that the community itself is a partner in this, right? It shouldn't be about working for the community. It should be about working with the community. And so I've done a lot of work to really move beyond community engagement to community integration. Making the community an active partner in what we do, which is why we at New Brunswick Tomorrow created the health ambassadors, which are regular at this point women, a lot more women than men, that just had an interest in wanting to do community work. And so we brought them in, provided them with training and an opportunity to really be that ambassador. And they've done incredible work. I think a lot of the successes that I've seen at New Brunswick Tomorrow in the health space, really I would attribute to the fact that we were working with them, and they really served as a bridge between us and the community to really get that community buy-in that's so essential to do the work that you need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds too that in all the work that you've done, right, that led up to that kind of connection, right, between the community and the organization New Brunswick Tomorrow, that you saw that interconnection between, you know, the importance of food access and health and even like legal advocacy, right? And housing also. So I'm curious too that, you know, maybe forwarding a little into the future also now as City Council President, how did all of these experience sort of influence the way that you approach that position? How did that sort of shape the way that you lead?
So for me, I think the major lesson that I've learned through all my experiences is that there is no such thing as a universal reality, that your reality isn't everybody else's reality. Your experiences aren't everybody else's experiences. So you at least need to be, you're not going to understand people's reality because you're not living it. But you at least need to be open to the fact that people are living in different worlds, if you will, and to try to understand that, right? Because that's how you get to really, again, developing that communication and then really getting to understand what the actual need is or how to address the need, right? And so that's the one thing that I, you know, when people ask me, well, what's the one thing that you've learned? I'm like, well, that's the number one, that your reality isn't necessarily a universal reality. And so with being on the city council, I take that same approach. You know, we want to hear what's, you know, people always, oh, y'all, all you hear is complaints. I'm like, yeah, well, that's what we're here towards, you know, to hear those complaints. But what I always, you know, challenge residents with is, you know, I would love for people not just to come with complaints, but why don't you come with ideas for solutions? Because I'm always going to push the notion that I mentioned earlier, that it takes a village to really be effective. And so you shouldn't, in my opinion, expect government to solve everything. It really is about how do we come together? Do we want to identify what the issues are? Absolutely. But how do we come together then to do that? And so that's how I approach city government, as a partnership. You know, I'm a resident myself, right? So it's like, you know, it's like the hair club for men, right? I'm not only the resident, but I'm a client. You know, I'm a resident myself, and so I'm not asking. I don't believe that I'm asking anything different than of what I'm asking of myself. You know, I'm not saying that you need to go into public service or go into, you know, an elected position, although I welcome it because I think it's important for everybody to get involved. But you know, come in with the attitude of wanting to work together. You know, so much so I think, you know, what we're seeing now, unfortunately, is you know, people have really gone to extreme corners politically. And that's led, unfortunately, to more finger pointing and people not wanting to work together. And the reality is that you're not going to get anywhere if you don't find some middle ground, right? And, you know, and in life, you got to learn to give and take, right? Because that's the only way that things kind of work.
That's really important. Right now, I'm teaching Rutgers Future Scholars, and we're actually talking about documentaries and government and how do you advocate, how do you understand. And we did root cause mapping, and we literally talked about, like, what's an issue that could happen in your community? What assumptions could you have? How do you go through those details? Then how do you then advocate for it, understanding what the actual problem is versus the assumption that you may have made, which we can see can happen often, just because you only have your internal bias. Sometimes you only have what you see, unless you have data and all these other things to support it. You might not actually understand the reason why something is happening. We're unfortunately close to the end of our time. I was hoping we could do some rapid fire because John Keller, who you know very well from Collab Arts, had a couple questions. So do we want to go through a couple of these quickly?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Let's do it. I feel like when we were talking a little bit about New Brunswick today, you did mention
Brunswick
Tomorrow. Sorry.
That's okay.
It is the today, as in I'm here right now, but not that. It's tomorrow. But for New Brunswick Tomorrow, you did already sort of speak of what it was like when you stepped in, the initiatives that you started, how you saw that change and how you saw it sort of evolve to the version that it is today. But I wanted to know a bit about maybe as in all the positions that you're holding, what do you see as the top priorities, if you will, of New Brunswick as a city, both, as you said, as your position, City Council President, but also as a resident, as a longtime resident and lover of the city? What do you see that future being for it?
I think it's twofold right now. I think the immediate need is affordable housing. But but that has to be tempered, right? You need to balance things. As someone who sits on city council, my job is not to just look at the needs of one group, but look at the needs of all groups in the city, and then how do you balance conflicting, needs, if you will.
Yeah.
Affordable housing tricky. I mean, it's not an issue that's endemic to New Brunswick. It's something that's nationwide. I believe that that the city is doing, a good job in terms of addressing affordable housing, but could do more. I'm not. Again, I always say you can always do better, right?
Yeah.
But you also have to look at what's been done, and so I think it's trying to make sure that you have housing that's affordable and available to all in New Brunswick. So a lot of talk around affordable housing is for those people that are really economically challenged, and don't have any money can't afford, like homeless, people who are homeless who are looking for, or unhoused who are looking for homes. And yes, very important. But we're also looking at what I would call the working person that can't necessarily afford to live in New Brunswick. So people that might be on early teacher wages, right? That when you're first starting out for a job, you're not making a lot of money, right? And so how do we create housing for them? Because they don't necessarily qualify for services under affordable housing, but can't afford stuff on their own. So it's important to also consider people who fall in the gaps, right? And you do need your affluent. You need to find a way that, again, you can find a harmonious, as much as you can, society that has that addresses the needs of all.
Yeah.
So I think affordable housing is an issue. At New Brunswick Tomorrow, you mentioned one of the, you asked, where are we going? We're doing a lot of that affordable housing development right now. We're getting government grants in order to rehab homes and provide that for people in need. And so there's a need not just for government to step up, but for organizations and others to step up to see how we can best approach a very complex issue. The other one is youth and the importance of youth, and really making sure that we provide youth with the resources they need to become productive members of society. And I say it in that cryptic way because not everybody is meant for college. Maybe it's a vocation, maybe it's something else. So what can we do in order to give individuals the opportunities they need in order to really excel as adults, right? And I would add the importance, and one of the major things that I have a gripe on is that we don't teach civics in schools anymore. And so there is an apathy, or even definitely a lack of interest of our youth with respects to government. And they're our future. So if we don't at least get them, the experiences, and make them understand the importance of being civically involved. We're not helping them set up a good future. And so one of the things that I really want to do and really push on is the importance of youth to get involved. To first be educated. Because I think there's a danger of getting involved without the right information. But educate yourself and then get involved.
Thank you so much for that. In 30 seconds or less, because we can't not say this.
I'm a talker.
We're at the end.
Okay.
Like truly 30 seconds or less. Can you just tell us about you and as an artist? Because we heard that you might have a band.
I do have a band. I am a singer. They haven't. My what I tell everybody is that the minute they throw tomatoes at me is when I retire. That hasn't happened yet. I've had things thrown at me that I'm not going to mention here, but they haven't been tomatoes.
Okay.
But yes, I play in a Latin band. We do tropical music, salsa, merengue, cumbia, bachata. I've been playing with Tempo Alegre for quite some time. They're really good friends. They're more like brothers, and so it's great to be able to perform with them. I perform with other bands, but mainly with them. For me, it's great because I used to love singing. I remember doing it as a kid. I started in the shower and felt that went really well, and so I started singing out in public. And it's been great. We have a couple of shows in New Brunswick.
Any coming up?
Yes, we're playing at Fat Cactus on Saturdays from 8 to 10 outside. So as long as the weather's good, we're out there. And we have actually coming up next Thursday at the State Theater, they're having their salsa, merengue, bachata night.
Ooh.
And so I invite people to come out there and dance the night away with us.
Yeah.
You gotta be there.
Oh my God. Well, choose a day.
I know.
Yes.
My dance.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you so much, Manny, for talking to us and answering all of these hard questions. I think that you did such a great job. We learned so much more about you. We tried to do our research, but by God, it's hard to summarize you into.
It's a lot of years, so.
Yes, a lot of great work.
Also, so much
Yeah.
work. Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you so much for being with us here today.
We deeply appreciate it. I think it was so wonderful to learn so much about all of this history that has led you here today. Like, I think the common theme has always been about, meeting people where they're at, really seeing them. And your work and your trajectory really does show that you've cared and you've shown up a lot. So
Thank
we
you.
really deeply appreciate you talking with us today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Goodbye. So, if you're interested in learning more about New Brunswick Tomorrow, learning about some of maybe the upcoming meetings of City Council, or even just hearing Manny's beautiful voice in Tempo Alegre, make sure to go to the description to check out some of the links there. You'll be able to find more information, as well as Manny mentioned, if you're interested in maybe doing some more diving into civics and local government and maybe attending some meetings for pay, check out the link for the New Brunswick Documenters, which we both co-manage, where you will find more information there as well.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. See you at the next one. Bye.
Audio Jungle.